Welcome back. It's the Flow Sports Hour on Flow FM, and it's time to once again step into the country sports time machine, going back 20 years to 2004 when Ardrossan were the premiers in the Yorke Peninsula Footy League, and the premiership player coach Anthony Lamond is joining me on the line to reminisce on the day. Great to have you here, Anthony. How are you going?
Yeah, good, Dan. Thanks a lot for having me. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Now, I first made contact with you about a week or two ago, and love to start out these conversations just by asking when I did reach out and first spoke to you, and obviously we were talking about the 2004 premiership. What were some of the immediate memories that came into your head?
Yeah, well, I think as I discussed with you, I'm happy to chat about it to anyone that's willing to listen. So firstly,
most premiership players are.
Yeah, they're pretty special, but yeah, a lot of different memories come flooding back. For myself, it was probably outside of marriage and kids, one of the greatest achievements I think that I've actually done. To go across to Ardrossan in 2003 and 25 years of age was a massive step out of my comfort zone. I was playing at Balaclava prior to that, and had a lot of success at Balaclava in grand finals and premierships. So to, get up and just go and take on a whole new challenge, and then within 2 years of make a grand final, win a premiership, I look back on it as one of the greatest achievements that's really become a real metaphor for my life. And stepping out of one's comfort zone, growing through that experience, and delivering the premiership at the end was something I'm very proud of.
It's interesting you say it's become a metaphor for your life. Just tell me a bit more about that. What exactly do you mean by that? What flow-on effect has it had over the last 20 years for you personally? Yeah,
look, I think whenever you come with any doubt in your life, whether that's going for a new job, or for me, it was stepping outside of the traditional working 9 to 5 hours and setting up my own business. And, there's a lot of doubt when you're going in and doing something like that. And I always reflect back and think back to my experience over at Ardrossan and think, well, that was something that was really uncomfortable for me at the time. I didn't know if I was going to be able to pull it off. I was kind of flying the plane and fixing it at the same time. But got through it. You learn on the job, you keep improving and keep evolving, and so I guess it builds a lot of confidence. So then from there, to kind of go the same, the doubts of stepping out, starting up your own business, those same questions come up. Are you going to be able to do this? Is it going to work? So I kind of always think back whenever there's a challenging moment and something if it's fear that's stopping me from doing it, I look back and I go, upon that 2004 or 2003, 2004 journey, and kind of think, well, I overcome that, I can kind of overcome anything in a sense. So, so it's really something that's very special to me from that point of view.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the 2004 journey. What was the state of the footy club like and the talent level like when you got there? And, how much of a mountain was it to climb to get to the 2004 premiership peak?
Yeah, it's a great question. Look, the club had a really good base. I'd followed Ardrossan very closely. I'd played with a lot of lads in Adelaide that were from the Yorke Peninsula and Ardrossan. So, back in the days of picking up the Sunday Mail, which kind of gives away your age a bit, doesn't it?
It does a little bit, yep.
You pick up the Sunday Mail and, I'd always have a look around the state at the different results. So I always had a pretty close eye on, Ardrossan. And the two years prior to me getting there, I think they'd finished, it was the top 5 over there. I think they'd finished 6th. And so I think they were like an 8-8, 1-8, lost 8. So they had a really good base to come into. And the first year that I went there in 03, and you're not quite sure what you're really walking into until you're actually there. But we finished the same again. Essentially, we finished 6th on the ladder. I think we won 7, lost 9. And what was really interesting was, we beat the eventual premiers that year. I think we beat every team that year, except for 2 clubs. But we also would lose to the bottom teams. at times as well. So it was really just trying to close that gap from from our best to our worst, essentially. Our good was really good. The results showed that. But yeah, then some days, we just didn't turn up, and we could get beaten quite comprehensively by the bottom team. And look, a really funny story, if you don't mind, I'll share you with that. We started that 03 season, we were 0-3, and I called a Sunday morning training. It was a bit of a shake-up call. We got beaten by Baskerville by 122 points. It rained 2 inches on the Friday night, rained 1.5 inches during the game. Otherwise, it would have been probably 250-point loss. But we were right at the bottom of that at that point. I thought, okay, this is what I've walked into. This is us right at the bottom, round 3, 2003. So I said, look, let's have a Sunday training, just a bit of a get-together, and have a chat about things. And we come out, we won our next 4 games. We were 4-3, had some really great wins, and we were then coming up against Wallaroo at home, who were 0-7. And a win would have put us into the top 3 at the end of the first round. A loss would see us slide out of the top 5. That's how kind of close it was. So we were really, really excited around the club, and we came out that day against Wallaroo and got absolutely flogged, 50 points in the wet. And I remember after the game, all the boys were up at the club, and they just, looked like they'd lost the grand final, and they're drinking the raspberries. And I thought, that's really good. They're hurting, they're on the soft drinks. It means something. And they all left the club really early. And then one of the sponsors come up to me and said, look, just to let you know, the boys were on the raspberries because they were down the pub last night till 1 o'clock in the morning.
So they were hurting. They certainly were hurting, but maybe not quite for the reason you thought.
I was really excited because I thought, you know what, this means something. This loss, we lost all momentum in the back half. We never, I think we won 3 out of our last 8 games to, again, missed the final. So, there was certainly some culture things, but there was certainly clearly, when you looked at the last 3 years, we just needed some more talent up the top end. And, I always say grand finals are won in September. Ours was probably won in September of 03 because we stepped out and started approaching some players and doing some recruiting. And I could tell, meet the coach in 03, I think we had 10 players out on the track that day. Our first training session in 2004, we had 50 players on the track. So you could already tell that the momentum was there, and we really had the talent, I guess, in 04. You still got to win them, talent's one thing, you still got to be able to, I guess manage all the personalities and keep the train on track, so to speak. But a lot of work was done from, September 03 through to December to make sure that we were going to come out into a, have an improved team, because I always think definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. So if we didn't go out and do that, I think we just would have finished that 4th to 6th again in 2004. So the club was behind it. Back in those days, it was completely different, I think, in terms of, player points and things like that. It was a whole different ball game. So we were able to go out and, I guess, target some players that we felt would be, that we were probably lacking, at the club. And then we, by luck, had 3 or 4 players kind of roll up in town or in the area that signed up as well. So, we probably changed the team over 50% from where it was in 2003 with some real top-end talent. And that just got us off to a great start in 2004. And, I think we knew, it was really interesting, like a lot of those players that were probably down the pub the year before, they knew that they had a real opportunity, I think, in 04. If they played their cards right, they could have been part of something special. And you could see an improved output on the training track. And, I quite often say, I think you need a perfect storm to go on and win a premiership. And our storm wasn't perfect, but certainly, it was certainly brewing up, and you could certainly feel that we were heading in the right direction to make finals and finish high up the ladder and, potentially make a grand final.
It's interesting to hear you say how much it means to some of the guys, and they know they can be a part of something special. To some people, it's just, local sport, but you're right. For others, it clearly is the opportunity to be a part of something really special. And no, it's not the AFL, it's not the be-all and end-all of life, but it really does go to show how much it means to a lot of the players and a lot of the people that dedicate their lives to playing sport. Let's fast forward to that 2004 season now.
Yep.
What was different from the get-go going into the season? Was it immediately a different feel from the previous year? Did you know something special was brewing early on?
Yeah, well, absolutely. Look, it goes back to our first training session, as I said, I'll never forget it, in 2003, and, kind of lobbing up and, 10 people there to meet their coach, and that first one in 2004, I think it was in January or whatever, we said, look, let's have a get-together, and I did a head count, and there was up to 50-odd people on the track, and just a big buzz, lots of spectators, the barbecues were going, and, so you kind of sense that we actually had some depth, and the people were willing to get out and do the work. And I guess round one, we played Munster, who were, had also recruited really well. They had a lot of ex-AFL players and Sandford players, running through the team, and they were always up around the mark in my time over there. Pretty much top three finish, I think, in most of the years. And, so we came out against them round one, and I think we won, it's pure guess, but I think we won by 7 or 8 goals, and a few of the new recruits played exceptionally well. And, so even walking away from that game, certainly a long way to go before, making finals and winning grand finals. But early on that year, we'd played some of the better clubs from previous years, and we'd had pretty convincing wins against them. So I kind of felt in that first month that the playing group, that they could sense it. Players aren't silly, and I think they could sense that they were, sitting on a pretty good opportunity, if they did all the right things and played their cards right. So yeah, those early wins gets the confidence up. We were pretty fortunate that year. I think we went through to round 15 before we actually had our first loss, which was against Butte, who would go on and play in the grand final. So, going into that game, we were kind of 14 zip, and we had the confidence up, I guess, and our tails were up, and we were playing a pretty good brand of footy.
It always adds an extra element when you go up against the team that managed to beat you during the season, and you meet them again in the grand final. You see it all the time in pro sports and in local and country sports. But what was the confidence levels like on grand final day? Obviously, going up against a team who had beaten you. On one hand, you know that they know how to beat you, but on the other hand, you know what you need to do differently to stop them and get on top.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really painful at the time. I sensed, and I hate hearing this, you've had a loss that day. And look, full credit to Butte, they beat us hands down. There was no, wasn't trying to, work towards the loss, kind of thinking, we need to have one win because, we need to have one loss because you don't want to potentially get to a grand final and that be your bad day, and there was kind of this feeling I sensed in the playing group that, dare I say, we needed to almost have a loss. Not that it was manufactured in any capacity. I have full respect to Butte, and I would say that that's probably a little bit unfair to Butte. Butte had a fantastic team that year. Like I think any other year, we just had an exceptional footy team in 2004. I think any other year, Butte wins the flag. Like they were a really outstanding team. They were quick. They had the male medalist in their team. They were really well balanced all the way throughout. And yeah, they beat us that day by, I think, 5 or 6 goals. And like I said, it's the second to last game. We came out in the last minor round game, had a really good win against our arch rivals. And then we played Butte again in the second semi. And yeah, we were pretty fired up in that game. I think we won the second semi by 9 or 10 goals to put us through into a grand final, which also happened to be a home grand final, which we were really, really spoilt with and lucky to have. And then, so Butte won through, and you kind of think, well, they knocked us off here a month ago. So, Yeah, look, I kind of felt that we were definitely favourites going into the game, but viewed on their day, it could have been a different result, if things had all fallen their way. I just thought they were a really, really, really dangerous team. And yeah, like I said, probably any other year they probably win the flag.
And what was the feeling like? Obviously, you'd only been at the club for a couple of years, but I'm sure you could see how much this flag meant. It was the first grand final appearance for Ardrossan since 1990 and the first premiership since 1989. So for those players who had been playing at the club through juniors and had been there for a lot longer than you had, what did it mean to them and what did it mean to the whole team as a whole?
Yeah, look, you could sense it. There was a few senior players there. Greg Ware, who was our captain, and pretty sure he's a male medalist in the association. Like, just a great footballer, fantastic footballer. And he was probably, oh God, I'd hate to get this wrong, but he might have been 28, 29 when we come along with that team. And I remember he said to me one night, he said, mate, I wish I had this team when I was in my early 20s. He said, when I was at my absolute peak, he said, mate, this is just fantastic. I can, just sit out on a forward flank, not get any attention. And, whereas he was probably heavily tagged as one of their best players for, through his peak times when they weren't as strong. So, you could sense for guys like that, there's a couple of other players there that were, in their late 20s that, I don't even know if they'd played in a final series. They'd always been a really competitive club. Like, they always really, like I said, they win every second week and kind of narrowly miss out on the finals. So there were certainly no easy beats, but there was a lot of players that had, maybe played 150 games with maybe one or two final appearances. So for them to get the opportunity to break through was really pleasing. And then you've got all the supporters and the volunteers who make up these clubs. They're the fabric of it all. And, to see that what joy it brought to them is, really special. There's a guy at the club, I think, who was in his 70s then, called Clay Coon, had been at the club since day dot, and I think he was actually inducted as a life member twice. That's how much service he takes.
Wow,
I've never heard of that in my life.
No, neither have I.
They gave him life membership twice, and he's just such a lovely guy and a really calming influence around the club. And, like I said, in the 70s, still strapping the ankles. And, he'd always make sure that we left our tape on the floor. He said, don't worry, I'll get it. I'll sweep it all up. And I remember after winning in 2004, I just saw him walk out. He locked the door of the club rooms. He just looked up to the sky. I don't know what he said, but he just looked up and just, walked off to the car as if the job was done. And so, those things stick in my mind. They're the things that you really remember out of the day. Like the actual game itself, you're so involved in it. I don't have a lot of recall on it. You're so much in the moment. There's obviously, you won and the players that played really well. And although it was a classic, team effort result, but yeah, it's those other little bits around it that kind of really stick in your mind. Like, Clay Coon coming out and looking up to the heavens and, strolling off to the car as if the job was completed. So, it was really special.
It is the people like him that make up the fabric of a footy club, like you said, and the players are the ones doing the job on the day, but yeah, it's the years and the decades and the double lifetimes, apparently, worth of work behind the scenes that really, really make up a footy club, and it's those people that probably relish in these sorts of premierships just as much as the players. And I know you said you don't remember too much from the game itself, but I'm still going to ask the question.
No, absolutely. Look, there'll be some look, there's some big moments. Look, I'm probably going to ask it how it unfolded. It was a bit of an interesting one, I think, because the breeze was a bit different that day. It was always breezy at Ardrossan, but we kicked into the breeze first up, and I remember we came in the lead. I just felt that was really significant because, Ardrossan's the kind of a ground where if you lose a toss, the opposition kicks with the breeze. If they're wrong, they could have 6-7 goals on the board. And, it's a long way to make up, and the breezes can switch around and die out and all kinds of funny things. So, yeah, kind of to lose the toss and kick into the breeze, yeah, to kind of come in the lead at quarter time, and then it was a real arm wrestle, and I just remember we broke free at around about the 15-minute mark of the second quarter. I just felt the players really settled into what you can, it's what you kind of hope. You always say, certainly the coach, treat it as a normal game, and the earlier you can settle into the game, the better. The sooner it becomes a normal game of football, kind of the better you feel, I think, as a player. So I could sense that, but midway through that second quarter, we really started to get on top, and, I came in at half-time with about a 39-point lead and 40-point lead, touch over 6 goals, which I always think is a really dangerous kind of lead in a sense, because it's not enough to defend, but you can kind of get a little bit complacent, I think. Think that the job's done, but it's certainly not in modern day footy. And Butte came out and did what Butte did really well. They threw caution to the wind in the third quarter and really got on top of us. They were quick, they covered the ground, created a lot of scoring opportunities, and they pulled the margin back to 19 points and actually had a shot on the siren at three-quarter time, which the guy kicking for goal was probably 55 metres out, and it fell short. But, you kind of felt if they got that goal on the siren, it was back to a 13-point lead. I felt we'd tensed up a little bit. And I always felt Butte were a fitter team. They were a much younger team on average than us. And as I keep reiterating, they covered the ground really well. So it just felt like it was really game on again coming in at three-quarter time. And I guess the message was, look, you just don't want to blow this opportunity. I remember the words, actually. You don't want to blow this opportunity or you'll take it to your grave. And the players rallied again. And I said before the start of the game, we need our best players to play well. We need our bottom 6 players to do a job. And we need just one Smoky on the day. It's someone just to stand up and do something special. And, a guy by the name of Andrew Evans, great country lad. He stood up, kicked 5 goals from centre-half forward, which was a season high for him. Took some spectacular marks and, just played the game of his lifetime. So things kind of fell into place from that point of view. I felt that, the bottom 6 did their job. The top 6 contributed really well, and we had the Smoky, as we called him, pop up and kick 5 goals. We were able to run away with the game again, and I think we eventual 37-point winners, 35, 36. I should know the margin off the top of my head, shouldn't I? But it was around 6 goals.
Well, for someone who doesn't remember much about the game, you've got all the other details down to a T, so we'll forgive you for not having the margin off the top of your head.
I was thinking about actually halfway through, Dan. I was kind of thinking, for someone that says they don't have a lot of recollection of the game, he's just battled on for 10 minutes.
Yeah, you've pulled out some fantastic insights there, which I and our listeners certainly appreciate. Hopefully, some of your old teammates are tuning in. We better wrap things up, Anthony. Before we do, okay. I know there's a premiership reunion coming up pretty soon. Are you heading along to that one?
Yeah, look, it's with gutted actually. No, look, I'm Brisbane based now, so this call's coming from up in the Sunshine State, and I'm locked into something I can't get out of, which is a real shame, because it's also the 1974 premiership reunion. So just had a chat with the club this week with the organiser, but unfortunately won't be able to get back, which, like I said, it's really gut wrenching. So. I hope to reach out to some of the players, leading up to that, and I'm sure they'll have a great night, and I'll probably be the only one missing, which will hurt even more. But it'll be a really big event. Like I said, it's a 74 and it's a 2004 reunion versus Butte. I think it's round one of the year, so it should be a big turnout and a great day for the club.
All right, well, we'll certainly be covering off on the 74 premiership as well very soon here on Flow Sports. And if you did miss any of this conversation in its entirety, it will be up on the Flow Sports Facebook page. If you're listening as one of the old Ardrossan premiership players, leave a comment on that post. I'd love to hear anyone else's memories from the day as well, and I'm sure everyone would love to reminisce with one another. But Anthony, it's been great chatting to you and hearing your memories. It's like I said, for someone who doesn't have a great recollection of the game, you've certainly got a pretty photographic memory of just about every detail on the day, leading up to the day, and in the aftermath. So, yeah, it's been sensational learning about it. I'm really appreciative of your time, and I hope you've had fun reminiscing on it all.
It's been great. Like I said, happy to have a chat to anyone that's prepared to listen, Dan. So, mate, thank you. Really appreciate the interview, and yeah, mate, all the best. I appreciate what you're doing. I think it's great that you're, the nostalgic factor of catching up and reliving, these memories is great. So it's great what you bring to your listeners. Good on you.
Thanks, Anthony. I certainly have a lot of fun doing it. So, yes, it is definitely a highlight. But, yeah, thank you very much for your time.
Good on you. Cheers, mate.